Hello, everyone. I guess we have to begin the conversation. So welcome to this exciting forum. My name is Matai. I'm a social entrepreneur, a proud member of the Youth Transforming Africa. Today's conversation can help fill the gaps. Higher education and the future of work explores how the nature of work is changing, the impact of COVID-19 on education gaps, experienced particularly by women and youth, and whether the heart can fill those gaps. This conversation is brought to you by Heart4Dev, a program that employs heart in the development processes at the World Bank, and the Youth Transforming Africa, a community built from the Blog4Dev network, gathering the winners of an annual competition organized by the World Bank. YTA is a 70-strong membership representing 38 countries in the continent with an ever-growing face. Now, I would like to remind everyone that your microphone and camera remain off throughout the engagement. Feel free to drop any question and or comment on our chat box as we shall collect them during the Q&A session. With that, let me now introduce to you our incredible mix of speakers, beginning with Ms. Marina Galbani, who is an art curator and a senior program manager at the World Bank's Arts Program. Second on the list is Eliot Jolomi, who is a World Bank Group Education Specialist. And last but certainly not the least is Modupeola Fadugba, an accomplished Nigerian multimedia artist and a trained scientist. Without wasting a minute, allow me now to welcome Marina Galbani, who will introduce to us the art exhibition work at the World Bank and formally open the program.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Matai. Thank you, Modupeola. Thank you, Eliot. And thank you all for being here. Good morning, good afternoon. So as Matai was saying, we're very excited to have you here for this talk. This is the 8th of our series of artist talk. And this is especially dear one to me because we will discuss the role of art in filling the gap about the challenges that young people are facing, not only in Africa, naturally, all over the world, but specifically we will look at the case of 22 countries in Africa and through the artwork of Modupeola, specifically of Nigeria. As I said, young people are facing challenges to enter the work phase and how higher education can assist them or not. So this is part, as I said, of the artist talks, which are an integral component of the virtual exhibition We Are Africa, the Power of Women and Youth. We Are Africa is an unusual exhibition. It's the first virtual exhibition that the art program ever organized. And essentially, it takes the form of a series of insights in different aspects of the reality faced by women and youth and by the community in general in Africa around specific areas that have been identified as key aspect of the development of the human capital in the continent. So, as I said, we are touching upon higher education today. We will touch upon in the coming months on the green recovery after COVID and environmental crisis. We will talk about women as trendsetter and mold breakers. We have been touching upon gender-based violence, the new narrative about Africa, and many different aspects. You can find the recording of these talks if you are part of the World Bank inside our World Bank our program website. And if you are external, please wait for the opening of the exhibition in April of this year, in which we will launch both the exhibition and the catalog online, so everybody can enjoy both the art and the talks of the artist. As I said, this is an unusual exhibition, not only because it's virtual, but because generally exhibitions are organized behind the scene and the day of the opening to unveil the beautiful artworks. Here, we are building an exhibition together with you. So we strongly invite you to send your questions to our speakers in the chat box. We want your comments, your doubts, and if you have initiatives you would like to bring to our attention, please do so. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again to Matai, who will have the most exciting job among us today of managing this conversation. And I pass the microphone to you.
Thank you, Marina, for that introduction and the amazing work the bank is doing Of course, the World Bank has changed a lot in the last 70 years or so. Many people would be wondering why we are doing art exhibition here, but the bank is doing an amazing job in that space. So with that, I will use one of the panelists whom I introduced briefly before to take us through presentation. So Eliot Jolomi is a thorough international development expert with a focus on sustainable and human development intervention. Currently, Eliot's work as an education specialist for the World Bank based in Abuja, Nigeria, supporting programmatic, operational, and analytic works on basics and secondary education, Tibet, and higher education. Before joining the World Bank, Eliot worked for several think tanks, voluntary organizations, civil society organizations, and donor-funded intervention, including the U.S. Agency for International Development, U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, WHO, and the United Nations, with focus on education, health, agriculture, child protection, gender, youth empowerment, sports, development, economic strengthening. Eliot holds a degree in leadership and management from the University of Washington and has Master of Science in Financial Mathematics and Applied Statistics. So he's a gentleman with wealth of experience, and I'm very much honored to welcome him now for his presentation. Eliot,
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy here and to this presentation, not because I'm young people in Africa and talking about the future of work. It's about this. Go ahead. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Matai. So the thing is, what is the difference or what is the importance of art in education? And why should there be the A? How does it matter? You know, in Africa, most of the time, education is really looked at, mostly higher education and focus is looked at from the point of sustainability, from the point of income, from the point of the economic end. Most of our parents, they want us to study because they believe that the particular course of study you do will provide your sustenance for the future and can bring income to the family. Now, when this is thought of and thinking about the future of work, which talks about mostly a lot about artificial intelligence, talks about STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. A lot will be looked at in terms of the science-oriented courses, and mostly there's a bit of downplay of the arts. And this happens even from the high school and where parents and teachers try to focus young people to go into arts, to go into science courses in engineering, courses in computer science, courses in medicine and all of that. But what is the importance of art? Now we all know that science, technology can be very abstract in some sense. And as such, it can be very abstract in some sense, but art brings life to it. In 2017, STEM was a big and a topical issue in Africa and all over the world. Everywhere you hear STEM in terms of education. But lately, STEAM came into place. STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Now, why the A? Why does the A matter? The A brings realism to what you're studying. It brings it more to focus. Like if you look at this work on the screen, you can see how colorful this is. A circuit, and this is something that is done mostly in electrical engineering and computer science, a microchip. And you see how beautiful it is. It is the art that brings it to life. Science will show you the machines, and it will show you the extension, the tubes, and all of that. But the art brings it to life. And art makes things very relative. You can relate to it. Like the Africans can relate more with art. Even world all over, we can relate more with art than just STEM. So art is very important. And maybe during the question and answer time, I will spend more time in talking about encouraging Africans to to not focus only on just science, but to understand the relevance of art in education, to understand how art is being infused and embedded into teaching and learning, so that lecturers, teachers can relate more abstract ideas in a very simplistic way. Now, you see, you can go to the next slide. You see that in the US, for instance, the US, a lot of the population in US, like about 42% of the US are young people, and they have over 5,000 higher institutions. But in Africa, you have, in the whole of Africa, you have less than 2,000 higher institutions. Nigeria is one of the countries with most of the higher institutions. Some other countries in Africa, they don't have even up to 30 higher institutions. Now, this brings to the fore the access, the issue of access. What is the access to education like in Africa? Mostly for the sexes, for male and female. We can see this chart shows the gender scorecard. It shows how more males are even, gaining access to education more than the female. You could go to the next, and I wouldn't want to dwell so much. I am trying to run against time, but I hope I'm still making sense to you. You can go to the next slide. I wouldn't want to dwell so much on the challenges, but I've started with one, which is access to higher education. Access to higher education is a big issue in Africa, not just Nigeria alone, but all of Africa, where the question, which is even most critical right now, is the relevance. People keep asking, what is the relevance of me going to school? Why should I go to university when those that did not go to university can just with their high school and they can do very well? Why should I spend 4 years, 5 years, and so in the higher institution, and when I come out to get jobs, it becomes a problem? As young people, we want the best for ourselves. Our parents want the best for us. Everybody wants the best, and the challenges are so huge and they are so massive. And if I would say the government is making honest efforts, sincere efforts in trying to solve most of the challenges. But these challenges have existed over the years, where you have a mismatch between your skill, the skill set you are able to come up out of the university after 4 or 5 years. The skills is not relevant in the job market. It becomes a problem. And the question of relevance is very serious. And issues of funding, funding in terms of capacity building for our lecturers in the university, our teaching instructors. The COVID, I want to dive into the COVID. The COVID brought the future of work to the now. The COVID brought the future of education to the now. You see, lecturers, they had to learn quickly how to use virtual platform to continue and sustain teaching and learning when social distancing and the COVID was in the height of, world all over. And it was a problem for most, because they don't have the facility, they are not facilities. Let me try to save time and just to say that even with the efforts that have been put in place by the government, with the effort put in place by the education sector players, both the private and the public, there's still much more to do. And thankfully, the World Bank and many other development partners are working with AAU. AAU is the Association for African Universities, and this is like the overarching body that coordinates higher education in Africa. And the AAU is working with the bank to pilot interventions that strive to strengthen capacity building for lecturers, try to link university graduates for scholarship program, link university graduates for fellowship program, for mobility across Africa. Like when students from Nigeria can go to Kenya, go to Nairobi to school to do a special there's a lot of this interventions going on, and a lot of opportunities for African students. So you can check on the website. You'll see a very interesting project. They call it ACE Impact, and there's ACE One. It started in 2014 in Nigeria in 20 countries, and right now we are in the second phase of this project, and the World Bank, in partnership with that's the France Development Organization, they're working in collaboration to ensure that this is scaled up to many countries, not just scaled up to many countries, and even in country, it is scaled up across universities. Like in Nigeria, we have about 17 universities, 17 higher institutions where these programs are being done. And like you know, in Nigeria, we have over 800 higher institutions. So you can see the scale at which it's done. But this is going to be like a pilot to showcase the relevance of African research, to show the relevance of mobility, in academic mobility within African countries, and all of this, to show the relevance of small grants in research and PhD for things that are relevant and are relevant to the economy, relevant to the society. Matai, I don't know how much time I have more, but I want to quickly run to the future of work. If you can move to, so the future of work, that's where we all are. The pandemic brought us closer. Many governments have tried to, migrate to online learning, online teaching and learning. And we know some universities, they took about 2 months to be able to migrate to online. Some took 6 months. Some sadly, some have not even been able to migrate up to today. And that's like going to 12, 11 months or thereabouts, 10 of no learning in higher institution. So all of these are challenges, but it is also present to us opportunities, for the future of work, where graduates or students of higher education have been encouraged to develop, to self-develop, to take courses online, take these free online courses to ensure that they are well integrated, regardless of what you're studying, whether you are studying economics, whether you're studying, whatever you're studying, try to build up your capacity in terms of the future of work, try to build up your capacity in terms of ICT. You see, like lecturers, even if the lecturer is engaged with arts or is engaged with economic development or international relations, he or she has to lecture using digital platforms. So the future of work really integrates artificial intelligence, ICT, big data, how the knowledge economy will thrive. So I would want to end this by giving a quote that was made by a renowned Nigerian, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who said that ignorance is the most dangerous thing, and you shouldn't try ignorance, because ignorance is the dangerous thing. Yeah, education is expensive. It's more. Yeah, and with that, I would want to come back.
For that wonderful presentation, taking us through the what's happening around higher education in Africa. So meanwhile, let me introduce our next panelist, Modupeola Fadugba, who is an award-winning visual game artist based in Nigeria. A project, The People's Algorithm, which he created in 2014 as part of a contribution to Nigeria's effort to reform the education system, was featured by CNN. The People's Algorithms look at the challenges in Nigeria's education system and attempts to address these challenges using a creative multi-stakeholder approach. The work, a website says, creates a dynamic exchange of ideas between the audience, the artist, and the topic, seeking to activate constructive debate about how to change Nigeria's education system for better. Fadugba is a trained scientist with a degree in chemical engineering and a master's in economics from the University of Delaware, plus a master's in education from Harvard. Modupeola uses education and talent to reform Nigeria's deteriorating education system. He lives and works in between Abuja, Nigeria, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Fadugba is currently Smithsonian Artist Research Fellow 2020. Now give me pleasure to welcome Fadugba to give us a presentation. Modupeola Fadugba, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you
Wonderful.
so much. Can you hear me?
Wonderful, and welcome to our talk.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the invitation. I have to say it's quite interesting to have heard Jalomi's presentation as well, to get some of the background and really get to connect to people who are working in the space. It's been quite a while. I do have a background in education, worked in education administration, was the director of student affairs at the African University of Science and Technology in Abuja, which is also supported by the World Bank. So it's a great full circle moment to be here, because I left maybe about 10 years ago. And so it's interesting to still be talking about these ideas with the World Bank, but from a completely different perspective now as a visual artist. So yes, you can play the presentation, and I don't have any words or no fancy data. I've just kind of taken some key images, and I can talk through them, and also would be more than happy to answer any questions at the end. And so Deep Blue Sea, what we're seeing here is really a painting of synchronized swimmers. And I have to say, it's kind of like a dream for me to be able to see Nigerian and more broadly African swimmers in this format competing on a global stage at the Olympics in a few years' time, maybe a few decades. But to really have that level of coordination and education, it's like the hardest level of swimming engagement one can have is synchronized swimming. And so for me, it's something of a metaphor around education, strength, collaboration, and teamwork on a local level, but then also on a national level. So this could be very well in the future, hopefully in my lifetime, the Nigerian synchronized swimming team or the London synchronized swimming team. And I paint these to also speak to larger issues around collaborators and various stakeholders coming together to solve these challenges around African countries' competitiveness. And so if we are linking that to ideas around higher education today, I actually think, in my personal prediction, I'm pretty good with predictions, but I do think that in the future we will all be artists. And so if you are under the age of 35, I just turned 35 in October, so I feel qualified to speak on these issues to youth and for youth. But I do think that the younger generation, way or form, we are heading towards creative economies. And so there is a lot to be learned. The way that artists do things, the way that we see the world, and the way that we try to create value from really what's around us. I mean, is a painting, for example, of, like I said, swimmers, but this is a painting on paper. It's a burnt paper, acrylic. There's some gold leaf, so that's, expensive. It's 24 karat gold leaf. But really everything else are, raw materials, acrylic, my imagination, my stories. The burnt paper references images that I saw growing up right after the Rwandan genocide. My parents worked for the UN, and so we were there shortly after the genocide. And so these images of the burning stuck with me. But I'm saying this to say that these are my experiences. These are the images that I've collected. This work currently sits in the collection of the Smithsonian Institute collection. And it's not cheap. It's not cheap. And I say also, like, there's a lot that artists can say about creating value and about work. How do you work with others to create value? And yeah, I think that's all I'll say about that particular work for now. But I do think that we are heading towards young people just being more creative. And so I think kudos to the World Bank for including artists and the topic of art in this discussion. It's perhaps long overdue for really the world to think about the role that art can play in education. But I think this is a great way to begin to engage in the conversation. And so the second work that I have here is The People's Algorithm, which was really my first installation or foray into the art world. So I didn't paint, I decided to create a game installation as an entry into the National Art Competition in 2014. And so if you can think back to 2014, there were a few things going on, namely, that was when the over 200 girls were kidnapped from Chibok, from their schools, and then there was the huge Ebola outbreak. And so even then, these questions around access to education were topical. And so in this game, I'm going to show a video, but if not, I can just sort of walk you through it. A player goes into this Rubik's Cube, representing the multiple or multifaceted challenges of the education system. And on the floor, there's like a Monopoly board. And so you walk through it, and a player can play as a student or a teacher or a policymaker and encounters all sorts of challenges and setbacks. Rarely lucky breaks like a scholarship, to Harvard, but more likely the student is experiencing strikes or Ebola-related closures, and teachers don't know how to teach, as Jalomi was referenced, online. So there's these multi-dimensional and layered issues around access to quality education. And so it won a prize in 2014. I was invited to create it again in Senegal in 2016 and worked with a group of students. They were actually business students to create this game. Within the course of, I think, 2 weeks, we had to do it, and it won another prize there. And so I learned a lot, and I think even the students learned a lot about the fact that they could be artists, right? In that time, even though they were business students, they helped me to create this work, and they were asking for certificates, which for me as an artist, I had never thought through. But I have all these sort of, I would say little, but I see them as actually significant insights as to how young people are working and can also contribute to creating value outside of a formal higher education context. Yeah. I could speak about this for forever, so I'm almost sort of like, are there any questions so I can speak directly to that, or should we? Any suggestions? Okay.
Maybe, Modupeola, maybe we show the video so that people can understand better, and then we can go to the question section.
My name is Modupeola Fadugba. I'm a Togo-born Nigerian visual artist who's distilled Nigeria's troubling education crisis into a game. The People's Algorithm is an interactive game installation that describes some of these challenges, and I'm inviting you to play. How to play? You enter into a larger-than-life Rubik's Cube. There's a game board on the floor. You pick a role: student, teacher, or policymaker. You throw dice. You learn some pretty grim statistics about the education sector in Nigeria. You spin a coin, heads or tails. Okay, heads. As a student, you have failed the university entrance exams for 3 consecutive years. Kindly take 3 steps back. Roll again. Intervention. How do we get 11.5 million out-of-school children into primary school? A, B, C, or D? Kindly pick an intervention and roll again. It looks like child's play, but you are actually gambling the fate of a nation. Pick a role, Nigeria, and let us play.
Yeah, so I will, I I think I can speak a little bit more about that video as well, in that we are speaking about students entering into higher education and what they should be thinking about the future of work. But really, I think everyone needs to see themselves as students and as lifelong learners, because even teachers are still learning new skill sets. Parents are learning new skill sets. And so this idea of everyone really learning how to learn better is important now, and it's going to be increasingly important. I will say, I mean, and I say this to, I don't know what the demographic of the participants, what exactly breakdown is, but I actually recommend this text to anyone, but it's called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And it really just goes into this idea in the future, well, even now, this idea of people who really invest the time to do cognitively demanding work are going to be increasingly valued because they're so rare. We're also contending with the fact that there's so much information out there, right, that many people can access. There are issues of access. Some people can't access the information, but some students can access the information, but don't even really know how to direct their energy towards the right framework to study. And so this idea of deep work, cutting off social media, cutting off distractions, and being able to really uncluttered work in a specific direction, finding groups, tribes, mentors to learn tasks, to learn skills, and to apply that in practice. I think those sort of principles are more important now than the actual going into higher education institutions. I just thought I would throw that out there, the deep work text. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Evangelists for it these days.
Thanks so much for that wonderful presentation. Very creative work you are doing there. I will come back to you in a while. So I want to bring back Eliot to the program based on his presentation a while ago. But before I do that, I want to thank our wonderful audience for keeping the space by keeping their mics muted and their video off. I'll open the space in a short while for Q&A session. So, Eliot, the research on the future of work called for labor force that is creative, technically prepared, has advanced problem solving and critical thinking skills, and better adaptable, given that we are now moving toward the gig economy. So how do you think higher education institutions in Africa are responding in preparing the youth for these scenarios? In other words, does hard matter in our higher education? And on your presentation on STEM versus STEAM, I found it really interesting, and I want to hear your thought on this. If you can do that in a minute or two, that would be awesome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Matai. I would say that in Africa generally, the belief is for the young people, the advice would be for young people to look out for things that they can build capacity with, from their own side, because the system, is the system is not performing optimally at this instance, but the governments across several of the African countries, they are putting honest efforts, and there are being their interventions, across, supported by the World Bank and by other development partners, which the young people in Africa need to leverage on, take advantage of. But information, again, that's another problem. Information, the time that young people will get this information, most times they are being bombarded by other information on social media, and they are not able to quickly cash on onto what should be you know. But if you say about the higher institution, how well prepared the higher institution is for the future of work,
Eliot, we're having trouble hearing you.
an A, like a 70%, but after this one, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Please go right ahead.
Okay. Okay, so permit me to do without my video. So a lot of institutions in Africa, in Nigeria, they are doing fantastically well. In preparing for the future of work, they are able to present relevant research that are relevant to the now, research that are relevant in engineering, in medicine, across all fields. But the question would be, I'll put it back as a question, what is the coverage of this, of this preparation? Out of 100 universities, how many of them are prepared and are preparing the students, the graduates, and all that for the future of work? We are getting there, but we need to do more. A lot of supports need to come in, not just the World Bank. Other development partners need to come in to make sure that realistic, relevant, and economically viable training and skills are given to graduates all over, not just in few selected institutions. Let me stop there so that we can take more questions. Thank you, Matai.
Yeah, thank you, Eliot. And of course, the next question drive us toward what your recommendation would be for a young person who is now embarking on higher education path on the continent. So, how would you advise any young person now who is, trying to join higher education in Africa?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I would advise in the line that the future of work talks more about technology, talks more about artificial intelligence, and as such, regardless of the course of study, be it science, be it art, be it humanities, I would advise that these graduates try to, while they're in school, they try to pick skills that are technological related, pick skills that can make them function in the global economy. Also, very importantly, try to get academic mentors, not just lecturers, but friends, elder ones, and people that have gone ahead of them to follow in a path that they can quickly see the light. Otherwise, the question of relevance will come into play. I'm through with school, 2 years, 3 years, I'm unable to get a job. 4 years, 5 years, I'm unable to get a job. So these things is critical that people are guided, and mentorship. Mentorship is something that is lacking or is inadequate in African higher education, and that is something I would advise that a young person should focus on. Yeah.
Thank you. So my last question before I let you go is on COVID. COVID-19 has brought a lot of disruption on education, on social life, on a couple of things in Africa and of course across the world. So how will you think COVID will impact higher education in Africa, in case there is any? So, a lot of things here and there. Some are saying it's a blessing, others, are saying something that is completely, irrelevant. So what do you think? What kind of impact will COVID have on the higher education in Africa, particularly on the arts and humanities?
I would say it's, should I say it's a blessing? Because it brought the future to now. Lecturers, students, and everyone moved immediately when the pandemic hit, social distancing and all of that. People had to move to online learning, and that is a good it's a good opportunity to expand our skills in ICT, regardless of what you're studying, whether arts, humanities, science. And how prepared is the higher institution in Africa to maintain and sustain teaching and learning online? The access of teaching and learning was further, exacerbated by the pandemic, as not all students are able to connect. Even when the school is able to provide the facility, the students, not all have the facilities at home. But again, it's a good opportunity for the government to make investments in education, because no country can develop higher than the development they have in the education sector. When education sector indices increases, when there's success in the indices across education, it correlates with human capital indices and all of that. I would want to stop here so that Modupeola will take some other questions, and I'm happy to take more questions. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope to hear more from your side during the Q&A. We come in shortly. So thanks for that thoughtful answers to the question that I posted. So right now, I want to turn to Modupeola. You are an artist yourself. So what's the role of artists in raising awareness about the global higher education gaps between the needs of the market and the skill of the new workforce? So it's very clear that in Africa there are a lot of concerns around this area. So I'm interested to understand what you think are the roles of artists in this space.
Yeah. I think artists can almost serve as like ambassadors to really break down complex issues. They have a way of seeing the world. And so even in our creative process, I think like the documentation and the broader dissemination of that process could really help people identify spaces where their own talents could be helpful, right? And I say that the artist has a peculiar role in playing that, because everything is so visual, and maybe not everyone is a visual learner, but I think there are a lot of people who lean toward learning in a visual way, and education historically hasn't been structured in that way. And so this is an opportunity for, I think, artists and their work, their creations, and more importantly, the process behind their creations to the process of creating value and the process of work and collaboration. And I'll give an example to be a little bit more clear, actually. As much as technology is the future, I think Kunying earlier on was saying that there was a challenge in the DC area with network issues. All the networks shut down for about an hour, which tells you something, that maybe we're at a peak of technology. And I do think that ideas around craft and creation and what you can feel with your hands is also going to experience a resurgence, because people get tired. There's technology fatigue, and I think people fact. And so, for example, if people are becoming more creative and doing things more manually, there's a role to capture that process of our hands and taking a raw and adding them together and creating something. I think that just sort of sparks ideas and inspiration for others. I know when people get the opportunity to come behind the scenes and see me work, they're always surprised at what goes into it. I work with assistants. I work with people who advise me on law. On contracts with sonographers, people who are building things, with architects. I'm working with procurement. Today I was doing something with semicircles, and I was doing a lot of calculations. And so just this idea that artists sort of represent everyone. I think if you can show the behind the scenes process of what do, I think it could strike inspiration for young people to see themselves in that process, and to see that what they can do can value more generally. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. My next question is, you proudly mentioned in your presentation that we are headed for creative economies. So I'm just wondering, how could artists and young people work together to address the need for the future of work?
Is this for me as well?
Exactly, yeah, it's yours. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. So it's your question.
No worries. I have to say, I think young people are already ahead of all of us. I have to say, they've kind of figured out that the systems, the structures that were in place for parents are just, they're no longer there. I think they figured that out way before the pandemic, and so they've adjusted in a way that shows that they were already heading in the right direction for this very rapid evolution. And so I think that young people actually, you know, to their credit, and I say this as someone who leans towards, you know, even though I'm just on the cusp, I do lean towards more sort of traditional ways of thinking, institutionalized ways of thinking. But I've also been fortunate to work with a number of young people. And one thing they do is work together more than I think their older counterparts. Necessarily, they have to work together. They share information even within social media and their own social networks. They have a very different way of relating to one another, and there's something really admirable about that. Now, I think the next step is to make sure I'm sharing the right information, to make sure that I think also people who have access to the information that they might not have or they might need are connecting with them. There's always this huge gap where I think, you know, the young people are talking to one another, the older people are talking to one another, and they're both reinforcing their beliefs. And there is an opportunity to have like an intergenerational conversation. And I know that within my practice, that's something I've found to be the case, where I am. So, for example, right now I'm in Ibadan, and I'm looking at a number of local practices in textiles dyeing and beading traditions in Yoruba culture, and also indigo, what they call adire textiles dyeing. And this is something that I've had to approach much older artists in their 50s, 60s to really walk me through, because some of these traditions are dyeing traditions. But if you look at countries like Japan, these countries, I mean, people are traveling there to learn very specific dyeing techniques in small villages that they have to travel to in Japan, because that's the only place it can be done. But the country really legally conserved that heritage for the world to be able to experience that. An example to say that I've had to seek out these older mentors. And so the question is, who does the seeking out? Do young people have to reach out to the older generation, or does the older generation make it their duty or the responsibility to say we are passing down this information, so it doesn't get lost? And that speaks to my point once again about the documentation. Because if you're documenting artist processes as they're happening, then the seeking out doesn't have to be so treacherous. It doesn't have to be so arduous. It's you have information, whether that's sort of virtually documented through video, or even through books, through like research presentations, then the younger generation has something to reference. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Modupeola. I have to take it away from there. I'm looking at the time here and it doesn't look well. So thanks so much. My last question, and I would appreciate you can answer it in a minute or two. In the hill we climb, which was the point presented recently by Amanda Gorman, she challenged that we match mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy. What is the role of arts in creating a more empathic, resilient, and creative workforce in this era and beyond? That is yours, Modupeola. Please make it brief.
Yes, I'm sorry. And I see a lot of questions here as well. My goodness. Woo. Okay.
That's
Let
my
me go
word
back.
too.
Okay. No, so I love. I don't watch news often, but I put on CNN to watch the inauguration, and that was like definitely a highlight. And I would say also just in closing this presentation, as we come to a close, I mean, the idea of love is really one that I talk about a lot. I think in the last presentation I was invited to at the World Bank early last year, I opened the presentation by saying, how does everybody interpret love? And that will sort of guide you as to how you can relate with the world. And my answer was teaching. And so my art, I see myself teaching visually. And so I love that. I think as we all become artists, which means to be more empathetic and resilient, we should think about what the word love means for us and how we can act that out in the workforce and beyond.
Wonderful. So that ends our discussion, of course, the conversation between myself and you two. And now we go to Q&A session. There are a couple of questions here, but the participants are quite manageable. So I would suggest if you have a question directly to one of the panelists, please, you can kindly mute and direct your question to them. And you can make it so brief because we are out of time. That would really be something so nice. So if you have a question, you can ask it directly to either of the panelists.
Yes, I wanted to ask if it was easy to collect statistics for the people's algorithm for Modupeola. And when you saw the installation, when you were in the exhibitions, what are the interesting observations from the visitors? And also we had a question from another participant here. She was asking, planning to put this in an online format.
Yeah. Well, thank you for those questions, and thanks for also summarizing them, because I think some people ask them twice. Statistics. No, it wasn't. It wasn't easy. I actually did use quite a few sources from the World Bank on unemployment and out of school children rates, and those are quite easy to access. And I wanted to make it quite high level, so I didn't go too much into depth. And yeah, so it wasn't easy to get too granular. But luckily, I wanted people to be able to still access it, and so I didn't have to get too granular. One thing I did also do was I collected anecdotes, because I only spent 1 year of schooling in Nigeria, my last year, which was of high school. And so my education is not even a Nigerian education. And I wanted to make sure that I had real life anecdotes from people who experienced 3 years of university strike and those sorts of delays, and incorporate that into the game. And so there was more quantitative and then more qualitative in terms of coming up with the scenarios, the game scenarios, what would happen to you in the game. Well, and then to the question also about the virtual or online version. So I first created this game in 2014, so it's been 7 years. And I exhibited it in Senegal, like I said, and then in France, in Lille, for about 6 months. And it was an idea to make it virtual. But it's quite, at the time it was costly. I think now I could figure it out. But it turns out that conceptually, the game had kinks, in the sense that it's really conceptual. I think I would need probably a team of people or a small research group to really make it a game that has game-like elements. So I actually took a bunch of courses in game design and realized that fundamentally the way I structured the player's experience wasn't quite right. Like, I give the players enough agency to make them feel like they could actually win, which is quite representative of the situation in Nigeria. A lot of people who feel like they can't win unless they completely exit the system. And so I think the way it's designed is conceptual, is very true to real life, but I would really have to go back and study game design or work with people who understand those concepts to then be able to digitize it. Yeah. And who knows, I think I might still do that in the future.
Yeah, sure. So you have one more question here. I'm sorry, we are running out of time, but this one you have to get it. And the question is, do you have any plans to create a online version of the people's algorithm?
Oh, I thought I just answered that. But yes, in the future, if I have the resources and the right support.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. If you answered it, good. So we can move to the next last one. Okay, there's one here. Are you planning to incorporate the techniques you are exploring in your future work? I don't know if it relates to the first one, but you know.
Yes, exactly. So I have been. The last exhibition I did was in 2018. So it's been 3 years since I've actually done a. And in the last 3 years, I kind of set up my own research group between here and Philadelphia, and we have been doing a lot of beading. It's taken a lot of experimentation, failed experiments, working with different materials, working in Ibadan, getting information from older artists like Mama Nika Okundaye. She's a big textile designer in Lagos, working with craftsmen in Abuja. And yes, I am. They're making their way into the artwork that I should release this summer. So yeah, I'm quite nervous and excited about that. Yeah, thank you for that.
Wonderful.
Question.
So there's a question here, I guess, that goes to the two of you, and I would like Eliot to come in briefly because of time. The question is: different generation of different ideas on what is best for them. I think that the older generation knows better what is best for the younger. But is this so? Do you have ideas on how to reconcile this? Eliot Jalomi, if you are still there, and if you got the question, you can briefly share your thoughts on that.
Don't trust me. I think we have to look at the youths, the younger generation, mostly in the area of ICT, and the future of work is going in the direction of ICT. But the thing is, I think that there needs to be a balance. We need to strike a balance. The young people need to learn from the older generation so that we are not running in the wrong direction. You know, even as good as we think that we know as young people, we listen to the older people and we'll be able to create a synergy, and, you know, we can strike a balance and move, you know, with better focus, you know, to the future. I would like to stop there to be very brief. Yeah.
Thank you so much for making it brief. I know, Modupeola, you would want to add something there. But before you do so, you have a last question here, which I believe you will answer briefly. The audience is wondering whether there are any educational institutions that are receptive to your methods to encourage some kind of creative thinking among their students. So if you got me right, you can answer that plus the last question that went to two of you.
I did get you right. For now, I've just been trying to sort of invest in these processes myself. I do think that I was able to make it easier for institutions to then support, and then also direct institutions to others who've done it better or doing it at the same time in different spaces. But currently, I haven't really reached out to institutions to support what I'm doing. I mean, apart the Smithsonian supported my research residency in a very different capacity, but locally, no. I tried.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that now brings us to the end of this fascinating discussion. I apologize on behalf of the audience if they did not get the right time to, you know, share their ideas and ask their question to the panelists. But that's how we, you know, that's the best we could do. So my apology on that. I want to thank everybody who was tuning in, particularly my community, the YTA Youth Transforming Africa, for honoring me, giving me this opportunity, you know, to moderate this particular session. And I thank our brilliant panelists for sharing their thoughts with us, and everyone, you know, at the World Bank, particularly We Are Africa Group, who are represented here by our colleague Mariana Galbani. So thank you so much, and and good night, good morning, depending on where you are. It's been an interesting evening, and I wish you all the best in future discussions.
Thank you. Good morning and good night as well. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you all. Thank you, Sultan Matai, for moderating. Modupeola, as usual, you are fantastic. And Eliot, has been really a pleasure working with you. Thank you all. If you have more questions for our panelists, feel free to send them to the art program @worldbank.org, and we will try to put you in contact. Thank you, and we will be in touch. The next talk is February 25th. Thank you. Bye-bye.